I am the youngest of six. I'm a pastor's kid, so I was always in church. And I was saved at 8 because I think I really did realize, all right, if I'm going to be in hell if I'm not, if God doesn't save me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at 8 years old, I think I realized that. But it took a while to really walk in that. And
Mm-hmm.
especially when I got to college, I think I fully understood that I'm not like good enough to go to heaven. I
Mm-hmm.
think for a long time I was like a good kid, and that really like fed a lot of my worth and value. But it wasn't until college that I was like, no. When Jesus shares the story of the two people who owe this guy two debts, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
big debt and small debt. Growing up, I was like, I'm the small debt guy. I mean, I'm a pretty good kid. I'm a Christian, blah blah. But it really hit me, I think, in college where not that I was like resaved or anything, but it just
Mm-hmm.
really hit me that no, like I is grace. I had to like really consume more grace in
Mm-hmm.
that time, so it was cool. So yeah, then walking since then, and then what was it like a year ago? A little over a year ago, I
Mm-hmm.
felt really more called to ministry. Always something that I always did, even seventh or in eighth grade, leading Bible studies and different things
I
out
remember you
throughout high
telling me that.
school. But then really just felt like really called to pursue that more. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're all in ministry. We all do ministry wherever we are.
Yeah.
But I just feel like God wants me to do that really more full time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been good.
Man, so we're over here at Woodstock First Baptist, right? Or is it
Yeah.
First
First
Baptist
Baptist Woodstock,
Yeah,
first
whichever.
Woodstock. Yeah.
So you've been the resident over here. Has it been 2 years now?
I'm going on my second year.
Second
So
year?
yeah, I was an intern for a year. I was just testing. I was just doing it for fun in a sense.
Okay.
And then a resident. That's why I was like, I think I want to do this.
Okay.
And I'm starting my second year of residency.
Okay. So what does that role look like right now?
Yeah. So right now it's a little different, right? So we had Pastor Anthony that I'm just so thankful for his impact in my life. He really asked me to head up the KSU ministry because they didn't really necessarily have one in their college and young professional ministry. So I started that with an internship. He really poured in my life the first year of residency, and then he got a position to be a teaching pastor at another church. So great opportunity for him and his family. So right now, being the residency, it's like I'm leading the KSU ministry. I have a team for social media, trying to help this new like leadership program that we're starting up, helping lead small groups. And so it's a little weird dynamic right now, but trying to really lead the well in a sense of making sure we're on track, making sure we're creating a culture of serving, creating a culture of pursuing holiness, and really that community as well.
Man, and it fires me
Good.
up other young people kind of around my age that are on the same trajectory, the same path, looking just for the heart of Jesus and
Yeah.
following that, not just, proclaiming to be a believer, but somebody that walks it out in their day-to-day life with every action they take and every conversation they have. And I think you embody that, and that's why I think we connected so
Yeah.
quickly, because I passed through Woodstock for a short period of time, and it was good. I had no problems. It was just the Lord was leading me
For sure.
elsewhere, and the Lord's got a place for everybody, but He's also got a reason for why you're in every environment. And I think definitely one of the biggest reasons I was here was to meet you.
Yeah.
And so now we've got a relationship. We stayed in touch, and man, I'm just watching the Lord work through your life, and I can hear it in our conversations. And I just first of all want to say I appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
But
Me too.
what stirred you to get on fire for the Lord? Like, what brought you down that path where you said, "This is what I'm doing with my life"?
Yeah, that's a great. So, I think for a long time, even when like in high school, college, I always thought it would be like a side thing. So when I first started college, I was a civil engineer. That was like a month long, and then I transferred majors. I changed majors. But I was like, I'll be a civil engineer and I'll just teach Sunday school, or I'll be like I'll help with the youth program. So it was always a part of that. And then I've worked at two other churches where I was serving there, but I was always I'm gonna do this and something else. But I think it was Pastor Anthony really seeing that in my life, and even now it was my fiance, now wife, seeing that in my life. I think they knew before I did.
Wow.
So having people really call out to me, and then reading Deuteronomy 10, 8 through 11, and it really just spoke to me because it talks about like the Levites are dedicated to like serve at the temple, and their goal is to bless God. That's their first thing. And then their inheritance is God. So no one owes me anything for serving at church, right? It's God, right?
Come on.
And then from that, it's being with God. So Moses says, I spent 40 days with God again, like he did before. So it's spending time with God, speaking to God, him speaking to you.
Yeah.
And then he says, go lead my people in the promised land. And so that just verse stuck out to me like, wow, okay, I think my goal is to help people, lead people in a way that they're in the promised land, how a New Testament lens would say like a relationship with Jesus. So that verse really stuck out to me, and there's a few other ones, but that was probably the main one. So I had kind of people speak my life, I saw a change of interest. So I was listening to like a ton of exercise science podcasts because that was my bachelor's, personal training, but it kind of shifted more towards theology in like a deeper way, and more toward those things. So I would
Yeah.
say just interest, people speaking in my life, and I think God really using the word to speak to me.
Come on.
So, yeah.
Okay, I want to go back because you talked about being with God. What
Yeah.
does that mean to you?
Dude, that's a great question.
Yeah.
It's changed a little bit in the last 6 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
So I read a book called Practicing the Presence of God. by
Come
Brother
on now.
Lawrence.
You're
You
the
know that
second
book?
person I've talked to
Dude.
about this on my podcast.
Bro,
Yeah,
that
seriously.
book is amazing. I heard it from our pastor, Pastor Jeremy.
Okay.
And it's just such a awesome book. So it's a guy who, man, I'm blanking a little bit on his story, but basically he washed dishes in a monastery for a living. But he just practiced the presence of God that he would say, even in, you could say more intentional prayer time or in less intentional prayer time, he felt the presence of God. And so for him, just washing dishes, he would just pray through that the whole entire time, always lifting up himself to God. And so that's been, I think, one of the things I wanted to grow in. A lot of times I can vacuum, wash dishes, do little things, and just kind of have noise in the background, have podcasts. It's a good thing, but how can I really do that for God? So one of the ways that I kind of did this before, but I want to pursue more is anytime I take my dog on a walk, it's without my phone and it's a prayer. And so, and even before or after having like discipling someone or leading a small group, just praying during those times, like really filling that with prayer. That's one of the things that growing up, you always hear Paul say, pray without ceasing in one of his letters. And you're kind of like, everyone always explains that away to say, well, he's not actually mean blah, blah, blah. But I think that Paul probably had just this constant connection with God.
Yeah.
And it probably takes a lifetime to pursue, so I'm in no way there, right? But half that book is just saying, always give your thoughts to God. And when you don't, just return.
Yep.
So that easy thing. So that's something I've been growing in lately. But also just being with God too is just, I think reading His Word. For me, prayer journaling has been a good thing. Really letting nature kind of point you to God. So not worshiping nature, but letting, like when you see nature, like worshiping God through that.
Yeah.
And then also different relationships. I think even like with my wife, like learning really what like a human relationship, what it looks like to love someone unconditionally. It helps you and appreciate God's love more.
Man, and you also brought up pursuing, and it's funny you say that. Actually, I just started writing a book. I haven't even put it out. Yeah, I haven't even put it out. But when I went to Tennessee to that conference, he hit me with it, and I haven't even talked about it yet. But one of the first chapters, well, I guess prerequisite, the name of the book, he gave to me when I was riding up to Tennessee. It was how to experience the hand of God in your life, and then under that was becoming a warrior of Christ.
Let's go.
And so, basically, I sat down and it just poured out, and I did the first opening framework and then the first few chapters. And chapter number 1 is seek.
Yeah.
So pursue, seek, same concept. But talk about in your journey, because I'm sure you've experienced similar to me. The more I seek, the more that I put into it, the more I get out of it.
Yeah.
The more He meets me where I'm at. If I put that effort in up front, what has that been like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's always this weird rule where to pursue God, we get more out of that relationship, but we must put in a little bit, right?
Exactly.
It's not like we're just going to say like, all right, God, speak to me. I mean, He can, but usually it's like you're pursuing God a little bit and He just reveals so much more. So I think for me, I can remember one time, I think when I first started prayer journaling, when it was my freshman year of college, and I was writing down a bunch of people who I was praying for. Some people I didn't like. I was like, it was hard to pray for them. But I have my family, and I have 5 siblings, and one of them, I just wrote down peace. I have no idea why. It was kind of actually, I was like, I don't know what to write, but I guess I'll write peace. And probably a month and a half later, we were at a camping. We were around a fire, and she was like, I think I've just felt more peace lately. I ran up to her like, I've been praying for you the whole time.
Come on.
And so I think pursuing God, right, is like the consistency. It is a discipline, but it's a discipline just like with friendship or like relationship. Like you enjoy it, and then seeing the fruit of it, you're just like, oh, it actually works, right? Like because
Imagine that.
Yeah, right. Like sometimes you're like, oh, like we know it works, but once we like experience it, it just sinks in our like bones more. It's like, wow, we really believe it works. I think that kind of the discipline of praying, but also seeing how God moves, it really just deepens it for you.
Man, and you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly where I was hoping you'd go with it.
Yeah.
So good stuff, man. So you talk about prayer too. What is your prayer life? What do you think an appropriate prayer life is for somebody? You say practicing the presence everywhere you go, but what is it? What does prayer mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so many definitions. I think Tim Keller defines prayer as like the knowledge of God, or like knowledge of God. I have another friend that defines prayer a little differently. But I think prayer is just the intentionality of just like being aware of God, and in that, like having your heart toward God. And so sometimes I think it's important to have a ordered prayer. So when I prayer journal, I always start out with like addressing God as, usually I use one of his former names in the Hebrew Bible, like Jehovah Jireh. My Lord will provide. And that helps me like center, right? It's not that he hears it more because of that, but it's mostly for me. And then I'll usually pray for Chloe, my wife, and then it's whatever I'm kind of like thinking with right now. I've gotten into a lot because like the Bible Project, quoting like the Lord's Prayer, and trying to really take that to heart, not just saying it, but really, feeling it one more. And then also there's other times just constantly saying like, God, that conversation I had with this one guy, it's nothing unless you move. Or like, what really caught me, and this is like a deep sin I didn't know I had, was a couple months ago, I was leading a Bible study. I had a coffee with a guy, and they were both duds. I'm talking about they were rough.
Yeah.
I was like, dang, maybe I'm not very good at this. I don't know. And I told Chloe, and this is again, I would never think this, like my theology wouldn't put this, but I was like, yeah, Chloe, for them to change, God would have really had to move. And I was like, whoa, I'm thinking that it's my words changing them, but it's not God. And so ever since then, I've really been more intentional about praying before and after I talk to someone, really just soaking that more. And so a good prayer life, I guess going back to it, is ordered time and even structuring prayers. So you remember God is the provider, God is almighty. Even for me, I have little mantras like, God is almighty, so I can be humble and bold.
Come on.
Like, my Lord will provide. My Lord will provide for my transformation as like a spiritual transformation. He'll provide for my marriage. He'll provide financially. So there's some mantras right there, but also again, just all the time, before you do something, after you do something, just believing that prayer works.
Man,
yeah,
man, that's good, and I feel that, and I'm with you on like, especially praying before conversations and things, just seeking the mind of the Lord. Like, okay, Lord, you put this person in my life for a reason. Why have you put him here? And how do you want me to approach this? What do you want me to go into? And now, for me, a lot of the times, I'll challenge you too. I'm in prayer during conversations. When you're sitting there, and I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to the Lord at the same time.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? He's able to talk to us as we are conversing here. Where two or more are gathered, there he is. But like, he's here with us, and he's giving, words of knowledge, whatever you want to call it, as we're talking, and we're able to flow off of that, which is kind of the zone that I like to stay in. Because, if I'm aware of that, practicing his presence when I'm in these conversations, it just happens naturally and it flows.
Yeah.
And you see the fruit from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you said, you lean into it and you see results. Imagine that. I mean, it's the truth though. You know what I'm saying? But prayer is powerful, and I've talked about this before. The purpose of prayer, a lot of people think, is to get our will done, but it's actually to get ourselves in line with his will, so he can get it done here, through us. But I find it pretty cool that he still wants to work with us and use us to do it when he could really bypass us all together. But that's why he put us here. It's for him. It's for him. And so, I just show up knowing that he's with me everywhere I go, and I can tell you do the same thing, and it really just overflows. It's an abundance of just love and grace that you can show to people when situations don't always go how you want them to go. Because people are people. People mess up. I feel like we definitely are hard on each other, and I'm a victim of that for sure, where I need to probably give people more grace. But he teaches us through the process. Nobody has it figured out overnight. We're all learning as we're going, and he's dealing with our issues, and he's teaching us and molding us into the people that he wants us to be. Now the question is, why is he doing it? You know what I mean? And that's what I want to talk about today with you, is about this generation. Like, what do you see for the upcoming believer, and why is it so important for them to lean on the Lord in this season of their lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this year, I'm just going through the New Testament pretty slowly. It's like about one chapter at a time. And I was reading 2 Corinthians, the end of it, the end of 3 and the 4. And I felt like that was like one of the things I was like, man, that is That is so good for our generation. One of my favorite passages that I feel like I almost always even go to when I'm like leading a small group is 2 Corinthians 3:18, and it says something like, "The more you behold Christ, the more you'll change into His image."
Mm-hmm.
And I think for us, it's realizing that every one of us behold something. Every one of us are in awe of something, and even going further and saying whatever we are in awe of, that changes us.
Mm-hmm.
So like whatever we behold, it's actually beholding us and it's changing us.
Yep.
And so, just some like examples of that is just like with porn. So porn, when you watch that, it changes the way you view women or men. It just changes that, right? Or even social media.
Yeah.
The more you behold it, and you're just getting, infatuated with it. It can make you a little more self-conscious. For me, it does. It makes you more self-conscious. Maybe makes you more kind of selfish, think more inwardly. But when you behold God, it changes you. And so I think that's one of the things of, I'll hear a lot of people say like, man, how do I read the Bible? I feel like I'm just checking off a box. But when you say, I'm going to read the Bible and I'm not going to leave until I behold Christ, that's a whole different mindset. So doing that with prayer, doing that with even community, that you can worship through community, you can worship through everything you do. But yeah, like having that presence of God and beholding Him. And so I think that's such a huge thing. I think maybe even I might have missed growing up in church, was it wasn't really talked about beholding God. And that's almost the formula, not in like, I do this, God does this, but the more we behold Christ, the more He'll change us. For sure.
That's so good. And it's about the transformation, right? Like we lean into Him and He constantly sanctifies us. It's an ongoing process for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
But you can look back over a short period of time and see, wow, He really did a lot. And He changed thought patterns. He eliminated strongholds, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen overnight, and He doesn't address all of them at one time.
For
it's
sure.
usually one issue at a time based on level of importance. That's what I've found in my life and others' lives, where it's like, okay, this is the thing that's got to go right now. And for me, first it was alcohol, because I used to drink, before I knew the Lord, before I encountered Him, and it was something that was a stronghold for me, where I would go out and party and drink a lot and use it to cover up how I was feeling internally through family issues, through friend issues, whatever the case may be, relationship.
Yeah.
You look to something externally to cover that up. And for me, I didn't know the Lord, so it was turning to what I was told would help cover it up. And for me, it just kind of spiraled and got worse over time until I had the initial encounter with the Lord, and He told me that's the first thing that had to go. And immediately my desire to drink was gone.
Wow.
It was
praise
like,
God.
I'm telling you, bad, like 20 shots in a bar type bad. And shortly after that encounter with the Lord, gave Him my life, and then boom, desire to drink, gone.
That's amazing.
Gone completely, man. I'm telling you. And it's really wild what He can do with our desires if we give it to Him.
Yeah.
Not only things like that, but our future aspirations in our lives, like our lives, like what we want to do in our careers and our family and all of that. He will change all of that when you lean in, and for the better, because He knows better than us, right? He is the one that created us. I think he knows a little bit about who we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before we were in the womb, He knew us. So it's just walking in that identity that I'm a son of God, and He put me here for a reason, and leaning into that, because the world is not always truthful, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of misinformation out there that's guiding people down wrong paths, and I see a lot of people that are stuck and don't know how to get out of it, but it's because of what they've been told their whole lives and circumstances and things like that. But guess what? God doesn't care about your circumstances.
That's right.
He only cares about you. And if you're an open vessel, willing to let Him work through you, I mean, He will. Just give Him time to transform. I mean, be not conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind,
Yeah.
so you may know the perfect, acceptable will of the Lord, And that's really what it is, just staying in the Word, staying grounded, that being your foundation.
Yeah.
And, the more you seek, the more you'll find, back to that point. I mean, that's been my experience, at least. When I first got saved, it was like I was diving deep. I knew it was it. I knew He was what I was looking for, and I pursued with everything I had. And then dealt with my issues one at a time, and started giving me purpose with my life. Instead of something that was stressful and miserable, it turned to purpose and peace and joy. And yeah, when you're a follower of Christ, though, you can talk about it. The trials and tribulations are real. We go through things. That's part of life in general. But shapes us into what he's ultimately got for us down the road. We just have to know that it all works together for our good, and it's part of the process. He has to bring a lot of us through processes to give us that, certain aspect of ourselves that can do what he's called us to do. But it takes time, and that's a lot of people in their faith walk. They don't want to go through the process and kind of back out because of the world's temptations, because it's right at our fingertips. You know what I mean? Everything is right there on your phone. You can scroll on TikTok for 2 minutes and immediately be tempted to do something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's the enemy coming for our power and coming for our strength, because those little darts, they drain us from doing what God actually wants us to do.
Yeah.
And it's not about being right and wrong and following the rules and this and that. No, it's about living a life worth living. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people now are so caught up in what's going on, and it's really numbing them. You know, I'm seeing that a lot, where people are just numbed and they're looking everywhere else. And I can speak from experience because I came from that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I just kind of went on a tangent there.
No, that's pretty good. Man. Yeah, dude. There's a Noah Kahan lyric, and I love Noah Kahan. I listen to him all the time. He has a lyric that says, "I'd rather die numb than feel anything at all." And I'm like, is that not what people feel? Is that not what people are going through, right? And like that's like their mindset, but they also don't even want to address it. Or I heard, I think it was the writer of Anchorman said, "I always have to be on my phone because if I'm not, I actually feel how like worthless my life is." That's crazy. And so it's just like, man, are you these little things we'd use to numb our lives? Yeah, it's huge. And even going back to what you're saying, like the process, right? If we think about how any change is done, like the book Atomic Habits really lays this out. I know that's not a spiritual book, but it's very practical.
Hey,
where it's like it's identity, it's process, and it's outcome. And a lot of us get caught up on our identity, like, am I saved? Not, or am I a Christian? Or the outcome. We want to be saved. But going back to that verse in 2 Corinthians, it says we're changed to 1 degree at a time. That's that process, right? If we behold God, the outcome is that he's changing us. And sometimes we wish it was 10 degrees, or I wish someone else had 10 degrees more, right? But for us, it's like, man, if my identity is set in Christ, if I had the process of being in awe of God, God will change me as he does, right? And he'll change our desires. Yeah, he'll take out one at a time. Or even like sometimes our desires and our idols or anything. It's like we're held on with a grip.
Yeah.
And it's like he's either gonna take it off one finger at a time, or he's gonna rip it out. And sometimes it's necessary, right? Yeah. It can be hard, but sometimes it's necessary. Yeah. And so it's almost like God, please take it off one finger at a time. But if you need to, rip it out. And so I don't deal with it.
He's not afraid to step in when we're not ready either.
Yeah.
He'll bring us to a point in our life where we're so broken down and miserable that the only thing we can do is turn to him. And that was my experience, and I've seen him do it through people in my family. I've seen him do it through just people I'm in relationship with, where literally he takes away all those idols. He takes away everything to where they realize that they can't find their fulfillment in that, and they start looking for answers. And then here he comes with a seed that can potentially change their lives if they lean into it. And I've seen it happen where people take that opportunity and they do what he asks them to do, and then he transforms their life, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's just the initiation, right? Like that's our responsibility. We are initiators on earth. As it's loosed in earth, it's loosed in heaven. It's bound in earth, it's bound in heaven. So we have to initiate that relationship because it was severed from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now we have to receive what's already been done to reconcile our relationship, and then walk in that. Because why would you not want a relationship with your Creator?
Yeah.
You were just telling me about a conversation you had at the KSU campus earlier, and man, go into that for a minute, because that just that bothers me. Because why would you not want a relationship with the one that created you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's been probably several people. This is kind of it's more popping up more and more as we do our campus evangelism at KSU called Coffee Convos. We ask people questions about God and just kind of talk to them, get to know them. And yeah, there's several people who maybe grew up in the church, but they've found something, maybe some kind of community that they're okay with. They're okay with life right now, so they'll say they'll pursue God later. And it's like, well, at one, you don't know if you have later, and then two, why would you not want a relationship with God? Because they're like, I kind of believe in God. And it's like, well, what if, give me this. Let's say there is a God who created everything, and that God wants a like relationship with you. Wouldn't that be like, wouldn't you want that? And they're like, maybe. It's like, what do you mean, right? What do you mean? But yeah, there's something, and later in 2 Corinthians it says that like the God of this earth, Satan, he's put a veil over their eyes. It's the gospel. It just doesn't seem valuable. It doesn't seem like it's good. And so that's a huge thing. Is like you can present treasure to someone, but if they don't find it valuable, they have to have some kind of spiritual. God has to like reach them and take off that blind.
So talk a little bit more about the veil.
Yeah, so man, I was listening to a book called The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self by Carl Trueman. And it just talks about how how we view self has just changed over the last probably 400 years, especially in today. And so, man, when it talks about a veil, it talks about any of the lies that we believe or anything that's hindering us from from receiving the gospel. And I think one of the biggest things our culture finds is that our identity isn't our sex is our identity now. Not even like it's not even like who we are, but it's like what we do.
Wow.
And even just from a border like baseline, if your identity isn't something that you do, it's unhealthy. It's never good to be.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah, even as Christians, right? We can't have our identity in being, like a leader or a pastor or something like that. It must be in God before that. And that's a learned process usually. I think God's really taking me through that right now too. But especially when it's in whatever your sexual desire is, and especially when people will say your fulfillment or what it means to be human is to have pleasure, usually through sexual desire. What's crazy is one of the people who didn't start this, but really put it into the culture was like Freud, right? And he had a lot of crazy things. And most psychologists would say, yeah, everything he said was a lie. But it's still like the framework and groundwork of so many people in our generation. So that if you attack any kind of sexual liberation, you're attacking like who they are.
Wow.
And you're attacking what they live their life off of.
Wow.
But they don't even know that Freud was wrong. And they don't even know how that thought started. And that can even look like in the church too. Some people, they'll view singleness as like less. And it can be talked about as, oh, you're just in a wilderness. It'll be okay. It'll go like, no, you're pursuing God. Like that's where God has you. And so even in the church, we can believe that and not, but like it's louder in other places and it's easier to point at in our culture in other places. But it's in essence, it's like kind of like a false gospel. It's saying any type of restriction on your sexual liberation is evil, and you have to pursue that to pursue the good life.
Wow.
But I think some data is coming out where I think people are realizing that's not true, and that's even exciting because people are going to be really hungry for something like authentic, like the gospel.
That's actually wild, man. And I just, the scripture comes through my head. Don't be deceived. God's not mocked.
Yeah.
Whoever sows to the flesh will also reap from the flesh corruption. And I'm telling you, based on old experiences I had before I was saved, it doesn't do good things for you. You know what I'm saying? Just leaning into that lifestyle, it just does not bear fruit. And it leads you more to that place of being numb. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's a big tactic of the enemy. Now, obviously, to your point, is the sexuality side. And we actually talked about this, I think, one of the last times we met, too.
Yeah.
Of just the state of that in our world. It's really wild to see where it's come to. Now, I think it's always been there, but social media has really given the platform. And now with things like OnlyFans and all that, it's crazy how accessible that stuff is and how much it's in your face. Like, man, that can really be damaging to a lot of people's walk and relationship with the Lord because it creates that wedge, that divide. And when we're walking in sin versus walking in the Spirit, it doesn't bear fruit and it's not fulfilling and you lose that peace. I want to stay in a place where I'm walking in peace amongst chaos and nothing can take me off of that. But that only comes through soaking in prayer and denying temptations over and over because they will keep coming and resist the enemy and he'll flee from you. But he's going to come back at the opportune moment. You look in the Gospels and that's exactly what happens in Jesus' wilderness season is he leaves temporarily, but he knows the opportune moment to come back, right? And he's going to get his little jabs in every now and then, but for the most part, keeping that shield of faith up and having the armor with you at all times, and knowing that Lord is walking the same steps you are, and he's with you, and you can choose that route versus, you know, the counterfeit, the alternative. And it's hard, man. It's hard. Because we as humans are wired, give it now, you know, give me the short-term pleasure. But that's another thing Lord's been dealing with me on. I don't know why he's hitting me with all this right now, but sacrificing short-term pleasure for long-term purpose. He's been really dealing with me on that for the last couple months in general. And he's like, always choose purpose over pleasure, because one's sustainable, the other is not. And then he's also been dealing with me. I was doing a ministry nonprofit thing, and it's like, you know, I'm like, oh, I could be making money right now. It's not like that was a huge thing, but it was still a thought. But Lord said, purpose does not correlate with money. And I'm like,
that's good.
It's what we're put here to do. You know what I'm saying? And it changes in different seasons of our lives. But if you can get in line with what he wants you doing right now at this current point, I mean, there's nothing fulfilling like that. I can show up. It just makes me want to do more. You know what I'm saying? It's an overflow out of what he's given me. And I feel like I have to do it, not out of obligation, but out of just like, man, Lord, I owe you. Passion, right? I owe you everything. And you've given me clarity on what you want me to do. I can't ask for much more than that. And he wants to give that to everybody, but you have to put in the work to meet him there, to seek. And, you know, seek and you'll find, ask and you'll receive, knock and the door will be open to you. I mean, literally, that is it. That is it. And so many people overcomplicate it, and they want to read outside the lines and look everywhere else for the answers. And, you know, the Bible this, the Bible that, it's been manipulated, it's been this, it's been that. Just go soak in it with an open mind. Read the Gospels. And with an open mind, saying, okay, this could be the God that created everything. And say, Lord, if it's real, reveal yourself to me. And he'll do it. He'll do it. But you got to seek first with an open mind and an open heart that it could be real. Because if you don't have faith, then he's not going to help you. You know what I'm saying? So that's literally all he asked for from us. Are you kidding me? It doesn't get easier than that. When we owe him everything because of the price that was paid. You know what I mean? And that's why I do the things that I do on a day-to-day basis. It's not about selfish gain. You know what I'm saying? I've lost that. He's already dealt with that in me. Every time I get out on my own, he humbles me. And he's like, no, you can't do it without me. And it's truth. I mean, I can't do it without him. I can only do it through him guiding me and leading me, giving me direction and clarity and making the steps clear. We screw up all the time along the way. You know, it's not a straight line up. It's up and down. Like I said, trials and tribulations, challenges. They come up all the time, but that's part of it. And when you are walking with the Lord, he can help you deal with it. That's the difference. And it's like, I did so much on my own before I got saved and tried absolutely everything I could think of trying to look for that fulfillment. Could not find it anywhere. Drugs, parties, girls, alcohol, all the stuff. And nothing fulfilled me. There was still something missing. And ultimately, I had an encounter because I was looking for an answer. I was looking for something. And I just so happened to open a Bible.
Wow.
And then from there, man, I'm telling you, the Lord just took over. As I continued to show up and seek and put effort in, he met me where I was at and taught me. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's what he wants to do with people. But people are closed off. And I think going back to young people, I think a lot of it roots in school systems. Because they put people in boxes and they tell them you have to do this, this, and this, or you're going to be a failure with your life. You're not going to do anything with your life. So it's completely far from the truth. And when you are able to look past this and look at this, everything that's actually out there.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? But they establish those limiting beliefs for people at a young age, and it really carries through their teen lives, through their young adult lives, and becoming an adult. And then you see it throughout the course of their lives through, you know, mistakes that are made and things that happen that could be avoided. But it's all because of that root, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know how you feel about that, but he's been really stirring me on young people. You obviously, you lead a young adults group, so I mean.
No, it's huge. Where it's like, man, you just need to, like, you almost want it so bad for them. You're like, no, like, please, just do this, just show up. And there's I forget what Proverbs it is. I think it's one of the first ones, like 1, 2, or 3, and it's the whole chapter is kind of laid out in if, then. If you pursue
Man.
God, then blah, blah. And that's even
Oh
kind of
man.
going back to that, ask, seek, knock. It's not like it's not like I pray one time, God reveals. It's like, no, the more I pursue God, the more God reveals.
You hit it.
And it's a cool, like, I'm in a place of like discernment right now, what like next phase of ministry. And basically the blueprint is pursue deeper intimacy with God and he'll reveal it. And it's like, not done, but like, oh, bet. So you're saying that in order to find my purpose in life, I just need to pursue a deep relationship with the creator of the universe. Like, that's not easiest, but like in essence, it kind of is the easiest thing in the world, right? Like, make it less complicated, just being,
Mm-hmm.
I'm called to be with God, and he'll show me what to do, right? Be with God, he'll speak to me on what to do.
Yep.
And like, sometimes maybe just because I want it now, right? Or it really tested patience, right? 'Cause I'm like, okay, I'm with God. All right, God, when is it going to come? When's the next
Yeah.
answer going to be there? But yeah, really pursuing that, asking, seeking even more, knocking, even pursuing even more. Yeah, it's like that relationship, really. Because, I mean, it would be a terrible relationship with God if we were just saying, pray once, where is it? That's like, nah, no relationship works that way.
Yep.
But and especially with God, because he wants, and like he loves us enough where he's not really worried about, like he wants us to work with him to redeem the world, but he doesn't need that.
Yep.
Like there's something I wrote down the other day, but it was like, I was so thankful that he cares more about me than what I do for him.
Yeah.
And because of that, he's going to focus on me more than what I do for him. And I should do the same thing, focus on God more than just what I do for him. And there's just so much freedom in that when your identity and your value isn't from what thing you do, but from God. Man, it's the most freedom.
Constant. Never changes. Never goes away, man. And
Yeah.
what's the formula? Seek ye first the kingdom of God
Yeah.
and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. And lean not on your own understanding, but trust in the Lord with all your heart. Acknowledge him in all your ways, and he'll make your path straight.
Yeah.
That's the formula. You know what I'm saying? And it takes time, takes effort, takes commitment, it takes sacrifice. Not everybody's willing to do that, but if you are, change your life. I promise you that.
Oh, for sure. I think it was John Mark Comer. He said something like, the definition of freedom is saying no to your strongest desires so you can say yes to your deepest desires. And so like your deepest desires are to be known and loved, right? Known actually who you are, but actually loved despite those. Because in our society, kind of going back to our culture, a lot of people are, you say loved but not known. There's a lot of surface relationships. I hear it all the time. It's just surface, service. And I'm like, man, I mean, you're right. And then the worst fear is to be known and not loved. Imagine everything you've done wrong is out there and people walking away. That's our worst fear. But to be known and loved is our deepest desire. And we get to, have that in Christ. And then also have that with brothers and sisters in Christ and that community. Yeah. And so, I mean, you think about our generation is the most lonely generation there ever was. And God's local church is just what God, it's, plan A for dealing with loneliness, right? It's
literally, man.
I mean, I think even God's calls on my life is making the local church everything it can and should be. Having it like a family, having it like, not only people your own age, but cross-generationally. Like, let's say you didn't have a good relationship with your mom or dad, there's 20 or 30 people who could not completely fill that role, but can really walk with you through that and be a father figure, a mother figure. So many, that's how it was for me. Growing up in the church, I had so many people be mentors and pour into my life that were so many other grandmothers, other grandfathers, and just people who just cared about me. They say it takes a village to raise a family, or to raise a child. And I think today that's even more necessary, is our connection with multiple generations and our connection with people who actually know us and actually love us, for sure.
Man, and that's so important. It's so needed, and that's why God's raising up people like you, because
and you too.
This, for sure. But this next generation, we need to have a solid first group of shepherds that are helping people find their way, because Lord's calling for people. He is. He's trying to reveal himself, but people are boxed in, and we just need to get them. We need to strike something in them that makes them think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And become curious and help them find the answers and bridge the gap, because that's what we are, right? We're priests.
Mm-hmm.
The word pontifex, I'm stealing. Thanks, Ramsey. You know, but pontifex, right? The bridge builders. That's what we're here for people, to bridge their gap in relationship with God. So, man.
And the thing is, too, is like, you know, our generation is walking away from the church.
Yeah.
And what's something that we have to be aware of is that they're not going to come back for what they walked away from.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to have to not rethink the way we do church, but really be more emphasize just relational discipleship, relational, because a lot of people in our generation, they distrust institutions, they distrust history, they distrust religion, and Christianity is all three of those, right? It's an institution. It's you know, it's you know, in the past, you know, what Jesus did, and so for people to really, you know, buy back into Christianity, it's going to be done through relationships. But that's what Jesus had in mind at the beginning, and so it's cool how, because of our culture, because of their needs, it's going to make us go back to more of a relational way of doing ministry. And it's a blessing in disguise, because people are distrusting of churches, but it's hard to be distrustful of a friend. And if we can be there for people, man, I think it will help bridge that gap and help churches be a little more welcoming, because we're a friend, and the way I show love to you is by sharing the gospel with you and bringing you to church. Not like a super, I'm just going in to see if I like it and then leave. I want to go there, be a part of a family, be a part of people.
Be grounded.
Yeah.
Get planted.
No, it's huge. Yeah. I think one of the things, kind of going back to, even going back on that, in 2 Corinthians it says we're like jars of clay. And it's like an idiom for, or a metaphor in a sense, for just humility and authenticity.
Yeah. And
the more we can be authentic and humble, I think it'll be very attractive to people looking for truth and looking for that. Because secularism and all these things, people are seeing that it's empty. And so it's really our platform for doing ministry. It's not gonna crush ministry. It's gonna be our platform.
Come on.
And it's just gonna be a way that we can be really just intentional with how we pursue people, and making sure that they're seen, that they belong, and really making sure that someone is caring for them at a relational level. I think it's huge.
Man, I'm right there with you on that. And we got a lot of work to do, but He trusts you for a reason. So keep leaning into that, man. We need you. This next generation needs you. So keep pursuing the Lord, and we'll keep doing life together.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it'll be a good time. Yeah, I'm excited. There's a John Tyson. He's a pastor in New York City, and he has this analogy where there's this desert in Chile. It's like the driest place in the world, but there's like hundreds of wildflower seeds at the bottom of the desert, but it never rains enough to really fully bloom. But when it does, every decade or whatever, it's a super bloom. And what was a desert is now flourishing. And so I think people are going to be in that. People are really realizing, oh wow, like if I just pursue what I desire sexually in the moment, that's going to leave me broken. But I want something more, and that's going to be it's a dry desert, but it'll be a super bloom. And I think God's on the move. I think our generation is going to pursue God in a deeper way. We're realizing the things that we're trying to numb our life with, things that we're trying to find our meaning, our purpose in. They're not working, and they're going to pursue that. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited for how God will use us and just use other people to help our generation turn back to God. I'm excited.
Me too, man. Right there with you. Reformation, revival. That's where we're at, man.
Yeah.